myself, Tim. Hi. You have Lachlan.
Howdy.
And Ruben.
G'day.
In case you've just joined our show, we're three middle-aged guys who are working through some philosophical classics, and right now we're about halfway through the Enchiridion by Epictetus, and none of us have any formal qualifications in this stuff. We just read it and think about it as three dudes and talk it through, and we hope that you enjoy listening to us work through it. But before we do that, we will do our usual tradition, which is to discuss our beverages for the night. So my beverage for the night is a nice warm cup of Earl Grey in my Austin A30 teacup that my mum got me one year at Christmas, I think. So.
Too good. Oh, for everyone at home not enjoying that.
All right, Lachlan, what are you drinking?
I'm very predictably having a gin and tonic. I have sort of run out of my usuals. So I've got one of my wife's, which is a apple and black currant, which is a bit more frou-frou than usual, but it's actually not too bad.
It's pink.
Apple and black currant.
It is pink. Yeah, it is pink.
He's drinking pink gin.
Is it a kind of? It's almost purpley. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, it's pretty pink. Rubes has called it.
Well, I think Tim would say that all gin is women's drinks. So
that was his comment.
Well, I thought you guys had convinced me otherwise, so I kind of just saying, okay, it's just not. It might not just be for this dude. It could be for other dudes, but it's not for this dude.
I think British imperialists would say otherwise, Timmy.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm on board with them. That's fine. And what are you drinking there, Rubes?
Beer today for me.
Ooh, what is the beer?
Just Corona.
Yeah, nice. That's a sensible choice. It's in a nice glass that you've got there.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to fit two beers into one glass so that I didn't have to get up halfway through the podcast.
That's forward thinking. Good planning.
Yeah, practical action right there.
All right, well, let's jump in. So we're up to, I guess you'd call it verse 28 or chapter 28. I don't really know what the correct terminology is. We will just explain to those listening. We're going off a Kindle edition, which has an error in it. And if you're using the Kindle edition, just a heads up. So the section 28 in the Kindle edition is quite long, but it should only be the first paragraphs. And then section 29 is everything else that's in 28 on the Kindle edition plus section 29. So if we stop early and you're surprised, that's why. So section 28. If anyone trusted your body to the first man he met, you would be indignant. But yet you trust your mind to the chance corner, and allow it to be disturbed and confounded if he revile you. Are you not ashamed to do so?
Now, before we get on to that, chance corner, I tried to Google that. I
thought it was a Monopoly.
Yeah, it sounds like that, eh?
Yeah.
But I did find a reference, and sorry, we haven't done our podcast for 2 weeks now. So I did this research 2 weeks ago, so I'm going back in my memory here. But it sounded like it was basically like a place in the public square, a domain where people could spout and voice their ideas and what have you for anyone to come listen to. So you just imagine
like Twitter.
Yeah. Well, it's just someone on, standing literally on the soapbox is, I guess, what you'd have from the somewhat more modern era. And
what? That makes a lot of sense. But I read that and I didn't even give it a second thought. I'm just like, chance corner. My brain just interpreted that chance encounter, and I moved on. I didn't give it a second thought. But now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, what the hell is chance corner?
Yeah, it just seemed like a really weird
a street in Athens.
Yeah. So yeah, all they're talking about is just some rando getting up there on the soapbox and spouting forth their wisdom for you, and should you take heed or not? Is the question.
Well, it depends
Yeah,
if it's good advice.
I like it. It's nice and pithy, this one, and it just makes a lot of sense. I like the comparison. It's like you wouldn't let somebody, just like someone you don't know, just control your body and do whatever they want with it. So why would you allow them to do it to your mind? No, I think it's pretty simple, pretty good.
Well, I think it gets perfect for the modern age as well. I think people are really quick to trust online sources of information. So you hear a news story break, or someone's putting something forward, and whose opinion is it, and what's their angle. So maybe check your sources is kind of maybe a more modern sort of way to think about it before you just accept some random person's point of view. Where are they coming from, and why do they have that view? Be a bit cynical.
Is this the beginnings of fact checkers?
Yeah, maybe.
I do like the comparison of your physical body and the mind. You can sort of see them. He's almost putting them on an uneven keel.
Mm.
It's like, don't let someone control your body or your mind. Almost saying that they're equally important.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's just like more obviously, like, of course you wouldn't let someone control your body. So why would you do the same for your brain?
But we do, sort of.
Yeah.
Like when you go to the doctor,
constantly.
quite often you go to the doctor you've never met before, and they'll just be like, "Here, have this." Okay. And I've seen it in a different way. Like we went to the tattoo expo earlier this year. I went with my sister-in-law, and there was a stand after stand after stand of all these people with drawings of tattoos and things everywhere, and people were just like, "Can you tattoo me like right here, right now?" Everywhere. Like just, I'm like, wow. Just because it's a picture in that book doesn't mean that that person did that. That their studio did that, but it doesn't mean that person did that. That person, might not have the most steady hand, or the quality of work might not be what you're expecting to be. Like, people are very happy to just sort of go YOLO and chuck it in there. It's a bit weird.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I don't think going to see a doctor is the same way as trusting your body to the first man you meet.
They've taken your Hippocratic oath, right? So it'll look after you.
Oh, yes. The last time I heard that phrase was in the new Batman movie. The Hippocratic oath that was mentioned.
Oh, there you go.
That's very good. Anyway, well, I reckon we've nailed it. We're awesome. Let's smash on to 29. But to save our minds, because they're so long, what do you reckon? I'll read what's in 28 as 29A, and then we talk through that, and then 29.
Go for it.
Okay. In everything you do, consider what comes first and what follows, and so approach it. Otherwise, you will come to it with a good heart at first, because you have not reflected on any of the consequences, and afterwards, when difficulties have appeared, you will desist to your shame. Do you wish to win at Olympia? So do I, by the gods, for it is a fine thing. But consider the first steps to it, and the consequences, and so lay your hand to the work. You must submit to discipline, eat to order, touch no sweets, train under compulsion at a fixed hour, in heat and cold, drink no cold water nor wine except by order. You must hand yourself over completely to your trainer as you would to a physician, and then when the contest comes, you must risk getting hacked and sometimes dislocate your hand, twist your ankle, swallow plenty of sand, sometimes get a flogging, and with all this suffer defeat. When you have considered all this well, then enter on the athlete's course, if you still wish it. If you act without thought, you will be behaving like children who one day play at wrestlers, another day gladiators, now sound the trumpet, and next strut the stage. Like them, you will be now an athlete, now gladiator, then orator, then philosopher, but nothing with all your soul. Like an ape, you imitate every sight you see, and one thing after another takes your fancy. When you undertake a thing, you do it casually and half-heartedly, instead of considering it and looking at it all round. In the same way, some people, when they see a philosopher and hear a man speaking like Euphrates, and indeed who can speak as he can, wish to be philosophers themselves. So saying don't be an all-rounder or a generalist, or
Well, I think he starts out with really sensible advice. Is like, if you're going to do something, plan it out, think about it first before you commit. I mean, that to me, that's, I don't mean to be flippant. It's like, it seems pretty obvious, but it's good advice anyway, regardless.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's yeah, I think it's interesting. It's just think it through. What's all the work involved, not just the glory. I think that's the main sort of point. And
Yeah, it reminded me of our read through on the Republic. I think Plato or Socrates mentioned the Athenian suites or whatever it was. The stay, like, if you went down that path of an athlete, you got certain things you have to deny yourself. You made
yeah,
reference to certain hookers and certain suites or something like that.
yeah, I do remember.
What's the bit
But then
about drink no cold water?
I think
I
that's
don't know.
just a general health thing. Because they say about athletes all the time, you shouldn't have cold water. You should drink water at your body temperature, or warm water or something like that.
All right.
Yeah. Well, my son's heard this because today when we went for a bushwalk, we all packed our bottles of water. I packed Powerade. Wife and daughter packed bottles of ice cold water with ice cubes in it. And my son boiled the kettle and then put hot water into his water bottle. And I'm like, what are you doing that for? And he goes, because it's better to drink warm water than cold water. When you're exercising, your body absorbs it easier. I was like,
yep.
Okay. So he did.
Apparently, middle-aged men have had heart attacks when they've been training and doing like just footy training or something like that, and then drinking like ice cold water, and
just like shocks the system or whatever.
Yeah.
I also heard that about with fatty foods, you should drink like green tea or hot water rather than cold drinks, because the cold drinks can solidify the fat and cause more issues than having something warm that keeps keeps the fat liquid.
It sucks. I love cold water, man.
I do too.
You just don't want to have that big, white skim of fat sitting on top of your stomach layer, as it's cold water's hitting it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the second bit he starts talking about here is like, changing your mind willy nilly about what you want to do, and
that's your democratic. That's your democratic man, isn't it?
That's right. That's right. I forgot about that. That was good.
I am the democratic man.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think
we're referring to our read through of the Republic, where Socrates describes what he describes as a democratic man is someone that just doesn't stick to one thing, does a little bit of everything, doesn't really commit to one thing, which is kind of contrary to his way of thinking, because his whole thing is like, you have one job and you do it well, and that will serve you and the people around you, and if you can't, you die.
Well, and I think probably Epictetus subscribes to a similar kind of philosophy, I think, because he's more or less sort of saying, what are you, a child, getting distracted every 2 seconds, wanting to change your mind about what you want to do? Like, just pick the damn thing and stick to it, right? Like, stop chopping and changing, man.
But Timmy's right. That's everyone these days. Like,
it is modern life. Hey, yeah.
Oh, I love change. I love trying out different things and mucking around. I don't know if I could do one thing my entire life. I'd probably get very bored and permanently depressed. I like change and new challenges. That keeps me interested.
Yeah, I mean, like, modern life's different. So, like, I think if Epictetus was around, he might have a slightly different take. But I think he'd still be sort of pointing to the fact that that's cool if you want to go and try something new, but still understand what it means in its fullness and put it 100% of your effort into that then, if that's what you're going to do.
Yeah, think it through, do it properly, don't chop and change. It's still good advice, I think.
Yeah, I
Well,
think so.
it's you know, we'd look maybe at like buying a project car, Tim, and like I'll think about that kind of stuff all the time. And then as soon as I start thinking through what it really means and the amount of work, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to take that on.
Yeah, I, as you know, have done many projects over the years, and
Yeah.
Yeah, they are a lot of work, and there's a lot of things that once you've done a few, you realise there's a lot of hidden things that people don't talk about when they talk about how much fun it is to rebuild an old car or an old bike, and my wife knows those hidden things very well because it really frustrated her. But they are fun still.
I liked his comments there about imitating like an ape. Like an ape, you imitate every sight you see. One thing after another takes your fancy.
I thought that was good. Do either of you know? Has anyone tried giving a phone with social media to an ape, like with videos? Like, and can they swipe it and be kept entertained by cat videos?
Oh, I'm sure they could be.
I wonder if that's been done. Surely that's been done.
Would have had to have been.
Interesting. I
Mm.
might have to look
Particularly, I reckon something that's more modern, like a TikTok or something, because it's just like flicking through to the next one. You know what I mean?
And feeding you like videos. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's been a thing or not.
Hey, look, there's another ape throwing shit at someone. That's awesome. Let's go watch some more of those videos.
That came up on my feed within the last week. Some poor grandma in a wheelchair had crap flung at her from a chimp. Hit it straight in the face.
Dang.
I just didn't know they had apes in ancient Greece. That's all.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's a good point. Hey.
They were big into bringing animals from overseas.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and they had an influence in Africa and all that sort of gear. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
So apparently there's a second half to 29, is there?
There is. So I'll read that now. We'll see how we go.
Let's go for it.
Man, consider first what it is you are undertaking. Then look at your own powers and see if you can bear it. I'm sorry, that's made me get the giggles. Man, consider first. Or Samuel L. Jackson saying that. Like, gosh, that would be funny. Oh, sorry, I should have more maturity and not into that half-heartedly. But yeah, that just made me laugh. All right, I'll try again. Man, consider first what it is you are undertaking. Then look at your own powers and see if you can bear it. Do you want to compete in the pentathlon or in wrestling? Look to your arms, your thighs, see what your loins are like. For different men are born for different tasks. Do you suppose that if you do this, you can live as long as you do now? Eat and drink as you do now. Indulge desire and discontent just as before. Nay, you must sit up late, work hard, abandon your own people, be looked down on by a mere slave, be ridiculed by those who meet you, get the worst of it in everything, in honour, in office, in justice, in every possible thing. This is what you have to consider, whether you are willing to pay this price for peace of mind, freedom, tranquility. If not, do not come near. Do not be like the children. First a philosopher, then a tax collector, then an orator, then one of Caesar's procurators. These callings do not agree. You must be one man, good or bad. You must develop either your governing principle or your outward endowments. You must study either your inner man or outward things. In a word, you must choose between the position of a philosopher and that of a mere outsider.
Now we're getting down to the nuts and bolts here. I think that last sentence is really what he was getting at with this whole thing. It's
yeah. Choose between the position of a philosopher and that of a mere outsider.
Yeah, look, I think he's sort of brought this kind of topic up before in some of the other readings we've done, but it just sort of harkens back to the Socratic sort of stuff that we're looking at in Republic. Where it is to be a philosopher is a commitment and not something to be entered into lightly. And so I think that's what this whole story about the athlete and all that sort of thing is, just to give you a better understanding of the kind of commitment he expects. That, you may be looked down on by a mere slave and ridiculed, and he's talking about the athlete there, but he's also talking about the philosopher. So it's are you prepared to weather all that? Surely there's rewards, but make sure you put your mind to the task if that's what you really want to do.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's definitely what he's getting at, but I don't know. Is it that hardcore? Do you think? Do you think if you pursue philosophy that you're going to get those reactions from people?
I know they were talking about philosophers being strange men, if you remember, like sort of some of them, like if they were like going like really deep into it, almost like outcasts from society. Yeah. So I think he is like pretty literally talking about some of that.
Well, I mean, they killed Socrates, and I think Plato was sold as a slave at some point. Like,
yeah,
I don't know whether Aristotle fared any better, but
what do you think about now? Like, if you pursue the path of the philosopher, say, like now, do you think that it gets the same sort of reactions, or negative reactions of a different kind? Like, what do you think?
Man, that's hard to say.
I don't. Here's the thing. When you say philosopher now, that's kind of confined to a very specific academic subset. You know what I mean? Like, if you're a full-time philosopher now, that means you're basically a university professor that teaches philosophy or the history of philosophy. That's a very small number of people. But I think what he's describing philosophy here, I think it's more in reference not to a professional.
It's a way of life.
It's more like a religion or a way of life, and I think that's why you get him saying things like, "You must be one man, good or bad. You must develop either your governing principles, which is philosophy, or your outward endowments." So it's kind of like you don't get both if you're really gonna follow this path, and it kind of goes back to that whole Plato thing about the true philosopher goes outside the cave and he's blinded by the light and all that sort of stuff. But then the thing that troubles me about that, if that's his thing, if his whole thing is when he's talking about philosophy is love of knowledge or whatever, he's basically saying if that's the only real way to have that peace of mind, because if he's treating it more like a religion, it's very exclusive, it's very esoteric. Like he's basically saying you either focus on this fully and basically are hated by the world, or you can just go and be like every other normie. You know what I mean? To me, that's very elitist.
I think you're a bit right. But at the same time, I mean, he's sort of saying, look at your loins. Have you got the loins of a philosopher? So, I don't know. He starts out, I think, before he sort of gets too elitist, I suppose, by just sort of saying, look, every person is fit for a different task. And I suppose try and find what's the thing that you're best suited to and put yourself wholly into it, right? But don't go into something half-cocked. But if you want to be a philosopher, I mean, we're like a notch above, right? So, you got to really, put the balls to the
does
kind of.
But it does feel like he's. I don't know whether it's this explicit, but it does feel like he's saying that philosophy is the only way to peace of mind, freedom, and tranquility. I don't know whether he intends that to be what he's saying, but
I didn't pick up on that vibe.
Actually, no, you're right.
This is what you have to consider. whether you're willing to pay this price for peace of mind, freedom, tranquility.
Because you got to
I
remember,
mean,
his
at
whole
that point in
system
time,
of
he's
thought. His whole system of thought is choose what's within your control
yeah,
and aim for that. So I think that this does
yeah,
tie into it, because he's like, that's why he says, look at your body. You know, if you're built like a brick
yeah,
shit house, go and be a wrestler.
mm,
But
yeah,
if you're built like a jockey, maybe you don't want to be diving off the top rope, kind of thing. You know?
yeah, yeah, totally. Because that's before he even starts talking about the philosopher sort of angle. So I think you're right there. It's just talking about look at your own capabilities and what you can control, and that's where you'll get your tranquility and peace of mind and freedom from. So
Yeah, because you've based your what do you call it? Your intentions, or your what you want. You've aimed what you want at what you can achieve.
Well,
yeah,
it's in accordance with nature too, which is a big thing for
Yes.
philosophers. It has to be in accordance with nature. So
Yeah, he does bring that
yeah,
up a bit.
yeah.
Yeah, right. I think that makes a bit of sense.
Mm.
very nice.
I
Are we
think
happy
that'll
with?
be a new T-shirt though too. Epictetus, look at your loins. That's all you're. That's all you're gonna have on the T-shirt going forward. I love
Yeah,
it.
Timmy giggled at the start with that man bit, but then
Yeah,
he blew straight past Loins and didn't crack up. I thought,
I
this
know,
is
right?
game over.
I
Come
was
on.
disciplined. I was trying to focus. It did jump out at me, but I was like, no. Also, the wrestling, I was straight away I just thought of The Rock. This is funny.
When you say rock, when you say wrestling, I think Ric Flair.
Woo! Yeah,
I did.
Woo!
yeah, man. What would be Epictetus's wrestling move?
I don't know, man.
The loins slam of logic.
Yeah,
Dear.
Loins of tranquility chokes them out.
Oh yes, nice.
Choked him out
That's
with the loins
terrible.
of tranquility. That's beautiful.
Nice. All right, well, let's move on to 30.
Yep.
Okay, so 30. Appropriate acts are in general measured by the relations they are concerned with. He is your father. This means you are called on to take care of him, give way to him in all things, bear with him if he reviles or strikes you. But he is a bad father. Well, have you any natural claim to a good father? No, only to a father. My brother wrongs me. Be careful then to maintain the relation you hold to him, and do not consider what he does, but what you must do if your purpose is to keep in accord with nature. For no one shall harm you without your consent. You will only be harmed when you think you are harmed. You will only discover what is proper to expect from neighbour, citizen, or praetor if you get into the habit of looking at the relations implied by each. That's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
So, well, you have any natural claim to a good father? No, only to having a father. There you go.
I'm still trying to get my head around what he exactly means by nature.
I think he means the nature of relationships.
In this one, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it
Rather
just
than
meant it was to be born, you have to have a mum and a dad. So it's in accordance with nature that you have a dad.
You've got a father, but doesn't mean it has to be a good one.
That's right.
yeah,
Doesn't mean that father has to treat you kindly or be a nice guy. It's just you have a father.
yeah, yeah. No, that sort of makes sense. Yeah, I think it's yeah, but what you must do if your purpose is to keep in accord with nature. I guess they're sort of saying is like whether they're good or bad, your father is still your father, and you know you should still sort of treat him like your father. I suppose is what they're sort of saying. And it's a bit hard to take because I don't know. The language is interesting too, isn't it?
Yeah, I do like the give way to him in all things. That reminds me of English politics. Yeah, they always say, Will the gentleman make way? I'll make way.
Yeah.
It's one of my favourite parts of English politics.
Yeah. I mean, the stuff when you get down to about, the brother makes a little bit more sort of sense, I think, when we sort of get down there, about allowing yourself to be harmed by those sort of arguments or whatever they're doing wrong to you. If you've got your own morality, then sort of stick to that and don't lower yourself maybe to the level and to get into sort of petty stuff between your siblings or something. Just keep yourself to your principles in accordance with your nature, and you'll only be harmed when you feel you're harmed. Because that's that whole impression piece that we've sort of talked about before.
Yeah, with coming back to the father thing, I think it's just removing the ability to make excuses, right? Because you're saying you still have to look after them, and you have to give way to them and bear with them if they do things that annoy you. And like excuses, but he's a bad dad, and he's like, well, bad luck. He's still your dad, so you've still got to look after him.
Yeah, I don't know if that really works in the modern world as much, because it's it's true. Yeah, they are still your father, but I think it's I don't know. I guess it depends on the degrees you're sort of dealing with here. You know what I mean? If you're taking like genuine abuse from your father in the modern age, you wouldn't take that. You'd just go, just going to cut him off and not deal with him then, or whatever it may well be. But back then, you probably would have just taken it because that's how it would have been. You know what I mean?
Maybe. I don't know. I think it's probably coming back to that idea of a just man doesn't commit injustice. So, in accordance with nature, if you've got an elderly parent, they're your responsibility. And whether or not they deserve it doesn't change what it is.
That doesn't change the nature. Yeah.
Yeah.
Their behaviour doesn't change the nature of your relationship. It's probably the way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, you can certainly, I think, provide a roof and meals and that sort of stuff, and that's not the same as it being good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but part of the advantages of modern day is that there's the social safety nets. Now, I'm pretty sure that those things weren't a thing back then.
No, for sure.
So, the father would end up out as homeless, I'm guessing, or just dying from not getting care.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, I must admit, I wasn't even thinking about old age. I was just like thinking about even if you're you're a teenager or something like that.
Oh, okay.
But your dad falls sick or something like that, and it's you're going to fetch them broth and I don't know, a blanket or whatever it was, or are you going to be sort of like have the shits because they've been a jerk to you and giving you, clip around the ear and, yelling abuse at you all the time and all that sort of thing. So it's like, stuff it. He can get his own bloody stuff. Don't care if he's sick or not.
I'm wondering if he's thinking, because he's always emphasizing this whole thing of something can only harm you if you allow it to, right? Like, for no one shall harm you without your consent. You will only be harmed when you think you are harmed, right? I'm wondering if he's thinking, so hypothetically speaking, you have a bad father, they're abusive or whatever, and then they get sick. But according to nature, they're still your old man. If you then turn around and abuse them back, you've basically admitted the harm that they've done to you. So in his mind, he's like, by taking out revenge, you've allowed that harm to manifest itself in you. I wonder if that's kind of what he's thinking. I'm just trying to understand. It's a pretty bitter pill to swallow, if you know what I mean.
I think he's really trying to get at the heart of, like, if you've got your own moral code of ethics that you operate to, you should stick to that regardless of how someone's treated you, right? You
and
stick to
according
your
to
moral.
him, that
Yeah.
and according to him, ethics and morals are directly related to nature. You've got to understand the nature of things to know what's right, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you've got a code of ethics you operate to, even though your father's been abusive to you and all that sort of thing, take the high road and look after him, even though he's been an asshole and called you names and given you a clip around the ear or whatever it is. And
Except I think he's tying the so-called high road. He's tying that to the nature of things. So there's something foundational there. So it's not a matter of just choose your ethical system and stick to it. Like he's actually giving one, as sort of esoteric as it might be.
No, I see what you're saying. Yeah, but because of the very nature of the father and son or father and daughter, whatever relationship, that implies a natural thing that you need to participate in.
What do you think LGBTQ plus activists would think of that line?
Oh, I don't know.
Probably no different.
No idea.
No matter what the scenario, is it?
No idea. Yeah.
I don't know. Food for thought.
I don't know.
No, none of us have the balls to comment on that one.
No, I comment on it, but I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to argue that you haven't got a natural claim to a good father.
No, but more fundamentally, saying that's the one thing you do. You have a natural. You only have a natural claim to a father.
Yeah.
Our society doesn't. Our society doesn't think that.
Well, we've got the advantage of IVF and anonymous sperm donors and all that sort of stuff. So there could be
those are advantages, but those might be advantages. But I don't think that gets around his concept of nature. I'm not saying one way or the other whether he's right or wrong, but
no, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, look.
I wonder if given those sorts of technologies, whether it would have shifted his view.
Maybe, but I guess
impossible to know, I suppose.
But is it saying father because we're talking in Roman period where we wouldn't talk about mothers in the same way? Like if we're looking at it from a modern lens, would he say parent as opposed to father?
No, I think you could change that word father to mother, and it would mean it'd be the same thing. He's talking about that natural.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
He describes it as a natural claim.
So that's why I don't think, or that's why I don't. Yeah. So because of that, I don't think it would significantly impact it having the modern day perspective looking at it, because the idea is still the same. You still have a parent.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't think the term parent is synonymous to father or mother. I think there's a different category there.
Oh, so you mean like a biological father as opposed to father figure? Is it you trying to make a distinction about who that person was relationally and who that person was who gave you your DNA?
I would suggest both.
Okay. Expand, because I'm not quite following you.
Well, I'm trying to get inside his head, so I mean I could be totally off base here, but he's talking about nature, right? So you've got you've got the biological perspective. You have to have a father and a mother, so you would have a natural claim to them. But then I suppose from another perspective, he might be thinking, well, maybe your father's dead and you have an adopted father, but a father is still different from a mother.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like, because I don't know. Would he think that there's that the term father has like an abstract or ontological basis within itself that's not not tied to that biological thing? I don't know. I'm just floating ideas.
I don't know. Like, if we read later in the book references to females, in his arguments, probably, but
I don't think that's.
I think it's probably just more a case of this is the example of a natural relationship that he's chosen to use, and it's probably in his mind a more obvious one because at that point in time the male was the more dominant sort of member of the household, and that's just where the philosophy I think would sort of come from just in that time. But I don't know.
I think I
I
follow
think
what
Well,
you're
I mean,
saying.
he then moves on to brother. So, because the idea is there's different relationships, and he broadens it out to Praetorians and citizens and neighbours, I suppose. So
yeah,
Yeah,
he's talking about relations.
that's what I'm saying.
But the interesting part is that he talks about a natural claim. That's the bit that I'm stuck on. I'm just like, what exactly is a natural claim? But it might be impossible to know.
Yeah, but I think I read that as far as I know, IVF wasn't a thing back then. There's one way that people had kids, and it was a dude and a chick getting together. And so, in accordance with nature, you it must always be you've had a mum or a dad,
Mm.
and so that's all you can claim. You can't say, oh, well, according to nature, I should have a caring mother or a good father.
A caring.
It's just according to nature. All I can say
You get one of
is
each, and that's
I
it.
have one of each, and that's it. There's nothing beyond the fact that they physically exist and that they participated in the monkey dance. Yeah, that's it.
I was just having a look at another translation of those words just to see if it gave any different sort of meaning there. Consider not what he does, but what you are to do to keep your own will in a state conformable to nature. That's the way it was put on another one.
That makes sense. That's coming back to that idea of you are in control of yourself, and it's your impression of other people that harms you. So you can't control those people. You can't control your father. You can't control your brother. It's how you respond to it. Do you think that's what he's saying?
I think so. Interestingly, the more modern translation basically does away with that altogether. That reference to nature there.
Oh, what does it do?
Is that right?
What does it say?
It's cut sort of a bit shorter. So just says relations define duties. You've got a father, then you have duties. Helping him, taking care of him when he is in need, listening to his advice even when it's reproachful. You object that you've got a bad father. Are you necessarily related to a good father? No, only to a father. And that's all they say on that.
So there's no reference to reviles and striking, and that's very different.
They just said when he's reproachful is as far as they go on that.
That's because that's a very different prospect from reviling you and striking you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
that's very interesting.
Maybe they've decided that at the time the striking wasn't as offensive as it is now.
Well, I mean that's something that's even like just changed from the 80s, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty typical for parents to give kids a whack, and nobody does that now. So,
well, the term,
that's in a short period of time, right? Like,
yeah. And it's like, but I mean, the term reviles is like a pretty negative term, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It goes beyond harsh discipline.
Yeah, here's another one. Patiently receiving his reproaches, his coercion. Ooh. So it's only our version, I think, that sort of says reviles or strikes. So
I wonder how old is our translation? Does anyone know? It's a Penguin Classics, isn't it?
I can tell you, it's 1916.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It wasn't as offensive.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I don't know whether I really appreciate that kind of approach to translation.
Yeah, I mean, you do wonder how things are lost. Because I know, and my sort of, let's call him grandfather-in-law is Greek, and we'd often sort of talk about translating things, and he'd say, the word for this concept doesn't exist in English. So he was trying to explain something Greek to me. He said there is no translation for that word.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
right.
So I'm sure that happens when they're translating any kind of things that you get to some things that's just something different. You've got to
Yeah,
kind of work your way around it.
you hear about
But
you hear about that with German terms as well.
mm,
All right. Well, I reckon we got one more in us, and then we'll head to the pub. So,
sure.
I don't know. Have you seen 31?
yes.
It's another big one.
All right. Well, let's go. We're not here to. Well, hang on. I was about to say it's some Australian slang that would have put a swearing
know what
thing
you
in
meant.
here. We're not here to bang spiders. Let's put it that way. All right. 31. For piety towards the gods, know that the most important thing is this: to have right opinions about them, that they exist, and that they govern the universe well and justly, and to have set yourself to obey them, and to give way to all that happens, following events with a free will, in the belief that they are fulfilled by the highest mind. For thus you will never blame the gods, nor accuse them of neglecting you. But this you cannot achieve unless you apply your conception of good and evil to those things only which are in our power, and not to those which are out of our power. For if you apply your notion of good or evil to the latter, then, as soon as you fail to get what you will to get, or fail to avoid what you will to avoid, you'll be bound to blame and hate those who you hold responsible. For every living creature has a natural tendency to avoid and shun what seems harmful and all that causes it, and to pursue and admire what is helpful and all that causes it. It is not possible, then, for one who thinks he is harmed to take pleasure in what he thinks is the author of the harm, any more than to take pleasure in the harm itself. That is why a father is reviled by his son when he does not give his son a share of what the son regards as good things. Thus Polynices and Eteocles were set at enmity with one another by thinking that a king's throne was a good thing. That is why the farmer and the sailor and the merchant and those who lose wife or children revile the gods, for men's religion is bound up with their interest. Therefore he who makes it his concern to rightly direct his will to get and his will to avoid is thereby making piety his concern. But it is proper on each occasion to make libation and sacrifice, and to offer first fruits according to the custom of our fathers with purity, and not in slovenly or careless fashion, without meanness and without extravagance. Lots of big words in that one. Whew.
Yeah.
Felt like I clutched it a bit.
No, you did fine, mate. Did fine.
Thank you. Piety towards the gods. Have right opinions about the gods. Let's start with that. What are the right opinions about the gods?
I think they're just saying that you acknowledge that the gods are real, and that they are setting you on a path for a reason that's within their wisdom, assuming that that is fair and wise and all of that sort of thing.
So, like the will of the fates stuff.
Yeah, I think that's where they're sort of going with that.
So, yeah, it says that they govern the universe well and justly. That was kind of
Yeah,
almost, I think Socrates kind of hit on that point too. He's like,
yeah,
um, if they weren't just, then they wouldn't be gods. You know what I mean? They'd be something else.
mm, yeah. And so they're sort of saying that when stuff goes wrong, or according to you, you shouldn't blame the gods. It's part of the overall wisdom for the universe, right?
Yep.
and I guess they're sort of saying, you shouldn't be throwing accusations at the gods that they're neglecting you, is what he's sort of saying there. So um, he rolls that into, I think, this thing about wanting stuff that's outside of your control, maybe, and then if you're not getting it, blaming it on the gods as well. It's saying that if you go down that pathway, it's never going to end well, because there's a path they've sort of set, and if you're praying for intervention to do something that's outside of your control, then you may be disappointed, I suppose, and then maybe you're going to be like lacking in your piety to the gods because you feel like they've let you down or something. So he's saying you shouldn't do that, because why put the gods in that position? You just need to worship them for what they are, and trust in I think the fate of the however they put it, the way
Trust
they
the
govern
process.
the universe, maybe.
Yeah.
I think that's where he's going. I don't know where that's
Yeah. I think it's a trust
right
the
or
process.
wrong, but I think that's the vibe he's putting down. But
But isn't that there's another one that's I can't remember who said it. It's essentially like wish for things to happen as they do, and then you won't be disappointed, or something along those lines. I can't quite remember who that was, but I know that that's an idea of the Stoics, is that actually it might have been Marcus Aurelius' idea from his journal, but yeah, it's like wish for things to happen in exactly the way that they do, and then nothing will harm you, because you're like, yep, that happened, that should have happened that way. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Marcus Aurelius who had that sort of attitude.
Yeah, I think they're just sort of saying that if you're asking God for something, and then or the gods for something, and then you don't get it, it's going to be difficult for you to still love God if you see them as the cause of your pain. And I think if you're acknowledging early on that you should have piety towards the gods and accept that, then it's probably not the right thing to do. He's talking about an example there, I think, like where he was at the like the child and the father or something like that. You could have two kids fighting over. Sorry, that's the example. What was it? Polynices and Etocles. They were like two brothers arguing over a king's throne. So I looked up that story, as I usually do, and basically, if you got what was the base of the story? I think I've lost the plot.
Is it a bit like Cain and Abel?
I think it's just you've got two sons who both think they deserve the throne, and you're always going to have one unhappy and one happy, I suppose. So do you, who do you place the blame in?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that he also goes into the natural way that living creatures avoid things and move towards things based on what they desire. Thought that was interesting.
Yeah, he talks about avoiding quite a bit, which seemed like a bit of an odd concept initially when we started reading Epictetus, because it wasn't something I'd really thought about. I often think about people wanting things, not wanting to avoid things. But that is a bit of a recurring theme he sort of gets through every now and then. But either way, you're trying to seek to only control what's yours, and really when they talk about the gods, they're saying right at the end there, it's around, you should be offering your libation and sacrifice, and just doing it earnestly, and not, I don't know, loading God with your troubles that you're going to get disappointed when they don't get personally addressed or whatever it may well be.
Yeah. What do you think, Ruben? You look very deep in thought.
I was really interested in the bit where he says, that is why farmers and sailors and merchants and those who lose wives and children revile the gods. for men's religion is bound up with their interests.
Their own men's interest.
Yeah. So what struck me about that is he basically saying that if your religion is there to serve you, you're going to end up hating the gods.
That's interesting, though, because I mean, and I don't know what it was like with the Greek gods, because I know in the sort of early days of religion, a lot was sort of centered around the idea or the concept of personal God, and God being a God specific to you or your family or your tribe or whatever it may well be. So it's interesting now, I suppose, to sort of see that separation, that you shouldn't be asking God to care for you personally, because it's almost counter to what a lot of philosophy at that time around religion may have been. I don't know.
Maybe I'm thinking it's impossible not to think of it in modern terms, but if you do, I mean, sometimes you hear non-religious people object to religion because they say, "Well, what good is it?" You know what I mean?
Mm.
You know, I pray, I can pray for a Ferrari. I'm not going to get a Ferrari. I can pray for a new job. I'm not going to get a new job.
Yeah.
So they either decide that God doesn't exist or gods don't exist, or if they think gods exist, they then dislike God for not giving them what they want. But ultimately, what he's saying is, well, if your religion is bound up with your personal interests, then of course that's going to be the result.
Yeah.
Yeah, because life's full of tragedy, and if that tragedy impacts you, you blame the gods rather than it just being part of nature.
So is he basically saying you've got to invert that? Or I don't know whether he is, but in my mind, I'm like, well, the solution to that is to invert that and if you were to make your religion about praising the higher being, or if I don't know, I think Buddhists are about becoming one with the cosmos or whatever. But if you commit yourself to that higher order thing, put that before your own personal interests, then you're not going to end up reviling the gods, as he puts it.
Yeah, well, and I think it's just around sort of maybe doing it in the spirit with which it's intended, i.e., submitting yourself to God's will, I suppose, rather than trying to impose your will on the gods.
Yeah, in some ways, it's kind of funny, because it's like in any other situation, you'd be like, oh, that you're just being selfish. You're like, oh, I don't like my neighbor because he wouldn't let me load up my garbage in his bin, or you know what I mean. I don't like my uncle because he gives me shit presents. You know what I mean? Like in any other situation, you'd be like, oh, you're just being a selfish person.
Yeah.
And then he's kind of almost translating that to their gods, and he's like, well, I mean, you're going to hate them because they don't give you what you want, or you're just being selfish. And that kind of then trickles back into his whole philosophy, which is focus on what is yours, what you can control, and largely the only thing you can control is your own thoughts and emotions and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys ever remember, what was it? It was like a Jim Carrey movie. Was it Evan Almighty or something like that, or something like that? And I don't know, he gets made God, or he's filling in for God or something. I can't quite remember the story, right? He decides to answer everyone's prayers. And it's like, they have like a record, like 3 million people who win the lotto at the same time. So they all end up with $1.50 because everybody wins the lotto, right?
It becomes meaningless, yeah.
Yeah, and but that's also the thing, right? I mean, if the gods were there to answer every whim, it would be meaningless, right? If people were just asking for all the petty crap in the world they could possibly want,
And does anyone really think, does anyone honestly think that if you got whatever you want, that'd make you a better person? I think most people understand that would make you a terrible person.
Yeah, it really would. Yeah.
Yeah, hence the term spoiled brat. Well, let's wrap it up there, I reckon, and we'll head down to the pub.
Yeah, all good.
Insert pub. For those watching, this is a photo that I took when I went to Europe with my wife many, many years ago, and she's seated in the photo. But for all intents and purposes, it is the Pub Philosophers. So, Pub Philosophers, today, the topic. You guys ready?
Go, lay it on us. What have you got up your sleeve?
Yeah, bring it on me.
Okay. New Obi-Wan Kenobi show. Has either of you watched it at all?
I have not.
Ruben?
I will, but not yet.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to talk about it, but I'll keep it light and loose. I've watched the first 2 episodes. The reviews are high praise. There's a lot of hype about it. For me, it just feels a little bit B grade. Like they had some good ambitions, but they haven't got the budget to meet it.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, the music feels a bit generic, a bit vanilla. The special effects at times look like Xbox quality special effects.
Oh, wow.
When you pay attention, it's like, oh, that's actually a bit. Ugh.
So you don't reckon it's not like on the production level of The Mandalorian? That was the good one, wasn't it?
Yeah, but The Mandalorian was low budget, and they knew it, and so
it's all practical.
Yeah, and a lot
That's why
of
it looks so good. Yeah,
that's right, because they kept it to inside a cantina or inside this room or inside that room, or there's not heaps and heaps of big open spaces. But what they're trying to do is mesh it into like the third Star Wars movie scale, and that movie, like the third Star Wars movie, is not well written, but it is visually stunning. Like that opening scene where they have the massive space battle, and it's sort of you see.
Wait, which one's the third one?
It's the one where Anakin becomes.
You mean
Vader.
episode 3, or the third one they ever made, or
episode
what do you mean
3?
By the third one?
So, what we called the new ones, the third one.
Yeah.
The prequel.
Okay.
Yeah. So they got that big space
prequels.
battle.
Gotcha. Yes.
Yeah, the big space
say
battle.
prequels. I know what you mean.
Yeah. So the third prequel movie, that massive spaceship battle, is epic. It still looks amazing. But anyway, so the show's trying to go to that sort of scale, and they just haven't got the budget for it. So it feels a little bit B-grady, but I'm hoping that they get past that and it becomes something a little bit better. But
how's the story though? I'm more interested in that, I reckon.
So far so good. Yeah. I think it's
Probably hard to
working.
say after the second episode.
I like what they're doing with it so far. I'm not angry at it. So they haven't done an episode 8 on me at this point in time where I hate it.
Yeah,
it's okay.
That's all right. I hope it's better than the Book of Boba Fett, because that just kind of didn't quite hit the highs. Well, until they inserted Mando into Boba Fett, and it suddenly got better.
I think it's there are parts of it that feel like actually that's a good description. So, do you recall the scooter chase scenes in the Boba Fett TV show?
Yeah, terrible. Yeah,
it kind of feels a bit like that at times, where I'm like, oh, the budget's not there, it's not quite right. But then there's other bits where I'm like, oh, this is all right. So yeah, we'll see. That
were my most probably hated Star Wars character set ever in any of the series, the mods, I reckon.
Have you watched the Ewok movies?
Yes.
So even with the Ewok movies, that's more hated. That's so funny.
I like those Ewok movies.
Caravan of Courage.
The one where the kids end up in the spider cave at the end and all that.
Yeah,
I like those.
Yeah.
They were good.
The bad guys in those movies are freaky. I remember my kids watching the original Star Wars movies and being all sweet, no tears, no, it wasn't too scary for them. And then put on that Caravan of Hope, whatever it was, with those ridiculous looking bad guys. My kids both just freaked out. They couldn't deal with it. So, all right. Well, anyway, so far so good. Fingers crossed. The other show I was going to bring up is Halo. Have either of you watched any of the Halo shows?
No, because it's on like what, Paramount or something.
You can get a free trial for 7 days, so you can smash it out.
Oh, is the whole season there, or are they?
Yep, 9 episodes.
Okay.
So
I will check it out. I've heard it's pretty good.
Well, it's mixed. So the purists are like, we don't like A, B, C, D, and E because the internet is a positive place. But the show's done well, and it's pulled in a lot of viewers, and a lot of people who have never played the games are really enjoying the show. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've never played Halo because I didn't have an Xbox in those generations when Halo was kind of the thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it still is a thing. It's still going now.
Yeah.
The latest version's out, and it's still cranking. Did you
Well,
play
it
much
was
Halo,
the-
Ruben? I think you did. Didn't you play a lot of Halo 2 and Halo 3 back in the day?
Yeah, but only because I don't know whether you remember this. We used to have like our really early PCs, and then you tried to get a LAN party going, and it was you needed it to be like a full blown network technician to get them all to talk to each other back in the day. We're talking a long time ago now.
I remember.
But then,
I would get them working.
Yeah. And it would take hours. And then when you finally got it running, you play for a bit, and then the sun come up. But but then Xbox came out with their thing, and it was just plug and play. So that's when I remember. I never really. I mean, I played them all. I don't remember getting into single player that much. I mean, I finished them or whatever. But that's what I enjoyed about it is you'd be able to just get like a bunch of teenagers together or whatever, and just plug and play. You're good to go.
So here's a flashback. I remember going to Ruben's house in high school with it might have been just after high school, with a PC, and we set up, I think, 2 big dining tables in Ruben's massive family room that they had, and I brought over a big network switch, and we set up all these PCs, and we would play.
It was Counter-Strike, was it?
Yeah, Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
And,
it might have been Quake and Unreal.
StarCraft 2 or StarCraft?
Yeah.
Counter-Strike
might have been too early for that.
Big one when I was at uni, because we all lived on campus and we were all on our own LAN
network
on campus, and so we're constantly just playing Counter-Strike.
Yeah, that was the boss. Or Age of Empires, Ruben. I think we did a lot of Age of Empires.
That was a big one too. Yeah.
That was a good game. And Command and Conquer.
Well, Command and Conquer was the first one I ever did multiplayer anything on. On dial-up modem with one of the guys from school. Yeah. Command and Conquer Red Alert. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good game. And
that was awesome.
What else was there? Civilization. Did you ever play Civ, Lachlan?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I only had how you used to get those demo discs on like PC magazines. Right?
Yes.
Remember that used to be a thing? Or you'd get going back really far, the 3.5-inch floppy with have like Duke Nukem on there, or
yes,
something like that. You get the free demo.
Commander Keen.
Yeah, all that stuff. Stuff.
That was legit. I even had computers that used the 5 1/4-inch floppies.
Ooh,
and I had the Commodore 64 that ran off cassette tapes.
We had those at school, micro Bs. Yeah.
Yeah.
God, we really are so
middle-aged. Freaking 5-minute load times. People complain about load times in modern games. Please try loading a game off Commodore 64.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Try a 45-minute cassette player having to load the whole level. Plug it in, press load, and go renovate a house. Come back, it might be ready. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right, we'll wrap it up there. For those of you listening at home, we hope you've enjoyed listening to us waffle on. But I'm really enjoying this book, and we hope you are too. And remember, the Republic wasn't built in a day, and neither middle-aged men. And we'll catch you guys next time. Bye.
See ya.
See you.